Hey, this is Romy coming at you for Secure Mindset. Today, I have a very special guest on, and if you're a watcher of Fighting Secrets, you'll be definitely familiar with him. Today, I have DJ on a podcast from Fighting Secrets. He is a security professional from the United States of America, and today we're going to both cover a talk about the differences between the American private security mindset and the Dutch/European security mindset. So thank you very much for coming on, DJ. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, brother. I've been looking forward to a talk like this with another professional from across the pond, so to speak. Have worked with European personnel in the past, and I always found it very interesting and enlightening. And yeah, just really cool. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
More than welcome. Can you talk a little bit about your background so people have a general bit an idea of what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I served in the United States Army Infantry from 2005 to 2008 with two deployments, one to the Middle East and one a global expeditionary global war on terror deployment. Just doing a lot of training with coalition forces and things like that. That was really cool. And then from there, pretty much up until about 2012, 2013, I was working as a executive protection specialist and close protection specialist for the music industry and for industrial business industries, mainly the textile industry, both here within the United States and abroad. And then I took a short stint away from traveling, went back to college, got my degree in criminal justice, and was doing some more localized security details and began working for a private investigator, which I still work for, Gray Fox Investigations, LLC. And then after I got my degree, I started working overseas again, as well as a federal defense and security contractor for various subcontracts and worldwide protective services contract. And then just recently, I left a federal protective service contract, which was under the Department of Homeland Security. So I've been contracting for a long time, and I've been working in industry in various capacities for a long time, apart from the military background. So yeah, no, I enjoy it, and I still do jobs here and there, even though I'm in between federal contracts, kind of moving away from the federal side, more back to private clients, and just continuing my work with my private investigator friend as well. So
interesting. So there's a lot of experience in an American style of way of security, but also did you got to manage the taste of the European way of security, because these mentalities are inherently different.
They are. Yeah, no, it was interesting, especially on some of the overseas contracts, like in Iraq, for example. The company I was subcontracting to, and a couple of other entities I was subcontracting to, and we were working right alongside European companies. There's a couple of big British and one big, like, more broad European security company that are over there operating. So I was running across, Brits, Belgians, Italians, you name it. And we will work together on some things, and we operate out of a lot of the time we're operating out of the same green zone areas and the embassies and things like that, and diplomatic security stations. So that was really cool. It's just a great group of guys. And again, varying degrees of personality and how they do things, which I always found interesting, and I got along with everyone, which was cool. But consummate professionals, all of them. So they did a very good job over there, and I was very impressed with them, and just it was really cool to make those kinds of friends over there too. So it was really cool.
What do you think about the mentality then? Because we Dutch are particularly a stubborn bunch. I know the Belgians can be too.
Yeah,
Maybe some old Dutch mentality in there. But what are the major differences that you noticed? Maybe.
I mean, obviously, how they approach people in situations really differed. The Brits were much more. I mean, they got hard, or they got tough when they needed to, but a lot of the time they were just very just very cordial and very communicative and very explicit in what they were saying and how they would talk to people and interact and everything. And it was just very, it made you feel comfortable, which was good, even in the professional sense and how they were doing things. But obviously, there's that side too, because we are armed contractors and in a conflict zone. You know, they there was that time with them, and then also the Belgians and the Italians. You know, where they had to get to work and defend protect whatever they were protecting, whether it was a principal or a venue or whatever it was. But other than that, I mean, it was very just they were very just very nice to talk to, and they were very nice whenever they dealt with the locals or anything like that. And the Belgians, and I think there was one Dutchman in there as well with the Belgians, but kind of the same way. Most of them actually spoke really good English, which I was kind of surprised about. But that was cool, and very similar in those ways. Very polite, very cordial. They were a little bit the Belgians and the Dutchmen were a little bit more guarded, which I completely understand. You know, they're a much smaller and less known force and entity kind of in that region, so they kind of have to be. But they were kind of that same way. With us Americans, we're very much more forward on things and not quite
Bit
giving
more of a door kicker mentality.
a little bit, more so just very direct and almost commanding in the instructions that we would give a lot of the time when dealing with the locals and things like that. I mean, if they were a really, really properly vetted local and they were embedded with us and on our team, you know, we would treat them kind of like guys on the team for the most part. We still had to be careful because of how many people could sneak into those positions, and then how many quote unquote like blue on blue or blue on green type situations would happen with the local forces that we were working alongside would turn their gun on us. So we had to be very careful of that. But just kind of overall, it's that kind of American mentality, and just kind of very much more commanding in how we said things, you know, very, very military rooted, considering a lot of us are military veterans, you know, so we kind of do it more in that manner in the overseas aspect. Not quite as relaxed as the Brits or the Italians or everything. The Italians were cool. They're a little weird. It was just like to hang out like in one spot, whether it was like near the latrines or near somewhere, and just chain smoke and crazy. I mean, I'm a smoker too, but I mean, they were chain smoking. I mean, the locals chain smoke too, but it was just they were very interesting. So, and it looked like you had something to say there about them. So,
Yeah, it's like not wanting to get much on the hands though, but
yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're very it's strange. They're kind of greasy figures, but fellows, but at the same time they're very I wouldn't say OCD, but almost OCD about their cleanliness and things like that. Yeah.
it's interesting to see just to get those culture aspects coming forth. Like I know that the European Union wants to go into some aspects of like become the United States of Europe. They're
Sure.
trying to go in that direction, which they obviously are trying to fail. It's destined to fail.
Yeah,
But
right.
like in America, you have like these culture groups, but to my perspective as well, they completely differ. But generally, I feel like the American mindset is more a door kicker mentality. It's like, let's go get these guns out, fight them, shoot them, and let's get over it. Well, more of that's I know from the Dutch armed forces that we were generally used to win hearts and minds
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
communication efforts.
Right. Yeah. Well, and even when I was in the military, the doctrine was changing. I mean, when on my Middle East deployment, it was bad. That was one of the worst years you could have been in Iraq, and the civil infighting was at its height. The insurgency was at its height. We had multiple fronts that we were dealing with. So the tempo there was very fast and very intense, and we had to be aggressive. You know, we had to be. And then it slowly changed, more so in Afghanistan, but in Iraq it changed after that time period much more to the hearts and minds concept, which a lot of people like to criticize and say, we weren't supposed to be there for nation building, which to a degree I get, but at the same time, if we're going to destroy something, we better damn rebuild it. So there is that dichotomy in opinion and kind of policy and intent with that stuff. And then on the private sector side, I mean, with American companies, it's much more, we're trained to do a certain kind of job. We're trained to do these kinds of jobs. We're here to provide this kind of service, and that's pretty much it. Even though I got tasked out to all kinds of different details and things like that, that's how it is. They focus very much so. The private companies are very much more geared, as time went on, geared towards providing that service, and not so much the mentality that the government and the military were holding. So
just there to support and get the duties done, which they were hired to do.
Yeah.
But I feel like generally that security companies, like I'm coming from a corporate background in security, so I do a lot of just buildings and events. Usually, I used to do a lot of events with this. Things are not exactly going the way that I'm expecting to run an event very soon.
Sure.
But I see the way of mentality and the how do you call that? The sameness of it between like more PMC more type stuff and the corporate security stuff is like, we are here to do this job. This is what our client pays us to do, and that's what we are going to do. But not doing any for more else than required.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah, and that can be, it's become problematic because that's the mindset that the private companies are keeping. But at the same time, there's become more and more overbearing policy and request from the government side, as far as government contracting goes, onto the private companies. So then not only do we have to deal with the company side of policy and how they want us to do things and everything, then the government's coming in and saying, hey, we need this, and this, you need to do this, and this, these certain ways, and you can't do this, you can do this, blah, 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 blah. And it just over time, it's become more and more and more piled on and restrictive like that, which is not a good thing, because private companies are supposed to be able to be efficient and insular to themselves, in a large part, somewhat autonomous. And it's becoming a problem because the government wants to have their fingers in everything now and have that control and oversight. And it's like, sorry, guy. I mean, we're supposed to be doing certain things, and then you're telling us that we can't do a lot of what's entailed in those certain things. It doesn't make sense. So that's one big reason why I left this contract just recently, working under Homeland Security, which part of it was federal site and venue protective services while in a uniform, which I had sent you the video of. I have a video, two-part video on my channel on YouTube, covering overseas contracting loadout and equipment, and then the domestic side with the uniform and the equipment and everything. So when I was in uniform, a lot of the time we were doing those federal site things, very similar to what you do in a somewhat uniform service, and protection details and things like that. And then the rest of the time it was working with task forces, or being a private company, we have private clients too. So we were doing protection details for private clients. So big name sporting newscasters and high priority, high profile figures that are involved with that and things like that. When it comes to the private company and a private client, everything's cool. The private client has a certain criteria that they want. Otherwise, the company can do just about whatever they want. With the government, it is quite different. Much more restriction, much more oversight, and just, they just want to control everything, and that's not good from a private perspective. Even though we're there being paid by the government and everything, we still need to be able to have that ability to be able to do what we need to do. So that it's made it difficult. So
That's interesting, because I generally feel like, I do feel like that the private security industry in general, not only in America but also here in the Netherlands, more gets to involved and gets integrated into the private security sector.
yeah,
One of the things that I've noticed, and especially because that's the trend that I see at first in the Americas sector developing, is that the private industry is becoming more and filling more the holes that the law enforcement agencies are leaving behind.
yep,
There's one of these guys, like, he's become a huge meme with his company. You know what guy I mean? The guy up in Detroit.
yeah. Dust, yeah,
Mhm.
Dust, yeah.
Like,
He doesn't have much of a presence out on the streets anymore. He's more focused now on the self-defense training. He's a total fraud.
yeah, like, firstly trying to see this. Generally, I just try to keep the when I see bad stuff, I generally try to keep it like, oh yeah, I know who it is, and just leave it at that. But I call it frauds, definitely. And and because this guy, like, there was a video coming out from Vice or something like that, where these guys were patrolling, and they had like AliExpress like vests and gear on, and it was like, oh my fucking
Yeah,
god.
yeah, yeah, and that's from a couple of years ago now. Because I've seen that Vice bit. Surprising, Vice actually does some decent news every once in a
Yeah,
while.
once in a
But
while. It's rare,
once in a
but they cover
while.
some.
Right, right, right. But yeah, yeah, I saw that, and they're patrolling around. I'm like, that's. They were mostly patrolling gated communities and then areas that were mostly abandoned. Is
Mm,
what they were covering. Um, th- they were responding to incidences when those more private gated communities and stuff would call and need them to respond or whatever. But I mean, they they were just more of a presence kind of thing, just an overt presence kind of thing, as a deterrence for crime, which obviously didn't do much considering they weren't armed. In a place like Detroit, which has a very high violent crime rate, it has a large crime problem. Not being armed, that's just dangerous for them. And then again, wearing subpar equipment that isn't truly protective equipment is that's just a disaster waiting to happen. Um,
mhm.
and yeah, I
Let's
saw
keep it
that. It
at
was like,
that with that
yeah,
matter. Like,
yeah,
like, Jesus, come on. But to come back on the topic, is like the idea of having a private security company on the streets doing preventative work
yep,
here in the Netherlands, that like 3 years, 5 years ago, that was an insane thing, to my perspective.
hmm,
And but generally here in the Netherlands too, we see that the police are not able to keep up manpower. And what I see is, possibly in America and here in the Netherlands too, is that the private security sector is picking up more on the surveillance part. If you like,
yeah,
look at patrol duties and
yep,
being the preventative measures. Like, for example, my company is now developing to provide preventative services and signal and just being preventative environment. It works. Like, it works. And when I need something bigger, I just call the cops, because, and that's what they are. The cops like to think that they are preventative, to some parts,
yep,
but if you want, generally, if you want a dedicated unit, or a company or a professional that wants to do preventative work, call a security company. Don't call the
yep,
cops,
right,
because cops, in my perspective, are inherently responsive and reactive, not preventative.
yep. 100%. That's how it is here too.
Mm,
Especially in the last couple of years. But law enforcement is very much so a reactive and response force. Um, if you want that overt upfront presence and deterrence and the surveillance and monitoring, the private sector is the way to go. Here it is very prevalent. There are multiple, just in the state that I live in, there are multiple large and small security companies, going and checking parking garages and working private businesses, and that's aside from your general retail loss prevention. The more one level up from that, you have your security patrol and monitoring services and things like that, and they're all over the place. Absolutely. It's something like there's 3 to 5 security officers for every cop, kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, indeed.
Um, yeah. So I mean, it's a massive industry, in all kinds of varying degrees. And I like the higher end federal and private client side, obviously, because it pays a lot more. But also um, you can utilize your background and your skills a lot more and be more selective on the things that you want to do, and the purpose they're in. So being out there in the mix with the public all the time, I mean, props to those security officers who are getting paid $12 an hour and being in the mix with the public all the time, sometimes not armed. And it can get very dynamic very quickly with them.
Oh yeah.
But they're all over the place. um,
Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of like that in South Africa too, because I'm very familiar with South Africa. Um, there's several companies out there. One of the big ones is NoJack. So they do a lot of like your LoJack and vehicle monitoring stuff, because vehicle theft is huge in South Africa, um, and carjackings. But also, with how the laws and the regulations are out there, a lot of the time security there is armed, and they end up working right alongside South African police forces on capturing people. They end up doing that a lot of the time too. Some of that is prevalent here in the United States too, more so. It varies by state in the United States with certain security minutia, and types of work with certain companies and things like that. Especially when it comes to bail bondsmen or
Oh yeah.
fugitive
That's a
recovery.
thing. That's just
Yeah,
for the Netherlands. That would not never be possible.
yeah,
Like possibly for me, it's just like a Western thing. If some of these guys come here and try to do their job here, they basically, in the eyes of both the police and most of the private security company, they become cowboys, basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely, it very much varies here by state and the regulations they're in. The state I live in does not have bail bondsmen.
Mm.
The state the state to the west of me has bail bondsmen, and they work right alongside law enforcement day in and day out, catching fugitives, catching people who have absconded on their bail, who have active warrants, and they provide warrant services, which is something law enforcement does. So they do that kind of thing. In my state, there's no bail bondsman. Everything is handled by the state police and county sheriffs and everything like that. So there is that differentiation. I wouldn't say disparity, but differentiation between each state with how they do those things.
Mm.
But yeah, some states, a private company, private personnel can kick your door in and go in and arrest you and take you to jail,
Interesting.
and then they get a cut of the warrant reward, or the bail amount that's needed to be paid, or however that gets paid out for them. I'm not that familiar with bail bondsmen, just because I've never done that job, and we don't do that in the state that I live in. But people that I know have run bail bondsman companies and things like that, and yeah, they make some really good money doing that.
Interesting.
It's very surprising. They're kind of filling a gap where there is a deficit with law enforcement, but also it's just by law they're allowed to do it
Wow.
with the proper certification. So
That's really interesting, and especially for me, like for the guy and people that have seen a video, which probably will be linked up there somewhere, about my loadout, just my gear that I have on duty with me. You can see there's not even pepper spray of or a baton there. Like,
yep,
this is the Netherlands.
yep,
My voice is my weapon,
right,
basically.
right,
Yeah, there are options, but if you have a private security guy who's walking armed, man, that's something here in the Netherlands. That
yep,
means you had done something in the past that or required such high profile clients that you're able to be licensed armed. Like, I know that it happens for sure when in not a legal way. Like, I'm certain. I'm certain.
Yeah.
Even though
undoubtedly.
I've spoken with some of the guys here in the Netherlands who say, yeah, I do executive protection, but I need to be firearm licensed. So I just have a sporting license, and that's how I have my firearm. I just carry it on while I'm on duty, but yeah, nobody looks at me, so I'm fine.
I mean, that's a little bit of a workaround, but I mean, yeah, with the legality of things, like if an incident were to happen, a direct action incident were to happen, and he would have to deploy the firearm to defend him or his principal or whatever. I mean, that could end up kind of bad for him. I know the licensing
Well, yeah.
restrictions and regulations in Europe in large, especially Western Europe, are very strict, which has always surprised me because it's very different. Like with the maritime industry, it's very different.
Yeah.
But then again, you're in international waters most of the time. So, but yeah, no, that always blew my mind. It's like with such a deficit in the policing force, you would think that certain types of work within the private sector in Europe that they would have a I wouldn't say an easier, but more accessible licensing and permitting process. But it is very difficult. I understand how that goes. It's very interesting. Former Eastern Bloc countries, it's a little more lax depending on the country that you're in. But even some of them are restrictive. But I always found that very interesting. And it, like you said, your voice and verbal judo is your primary tool, apart from learning hand-to-hand combatives for defensive purposes and things like that. And I mean, props to you guys. That is not an easy job. And it's the same with some of the security people here that are on some of the lower scale contracts, like when they go and check parking structures and things like that, in different venues, and they're not armed. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, granted, a lot of the time they have pepper spray or a taser, but
I'm jealous of that sometimes.
Yeah, that surprises me too, that you guys can't that you don't even carry like a baton or anything. It's like, I would think that at least would be okay, but
nope,
I mean,
not
you
gonna
guys,
happen.
you guys have your restrictions, and I mean, we have ours too, depending on the job that you're on and the contract that you're on and how the state does their permitting system and everything, and how the government does their permitting. I mean, it's very diverse and variable in that regard here, but yeah, I'm impressed by you guys with how you're able to do the job with such restrictions. So it's like,
well, I do think that because people are familiar with us being unarmed, there is a general amount of respect to us in the private security industry here in the Netherlands. We are generally, I notice this a lot at the events where we, as private security, we are in charge of the event. Police gives us guidance, but when we say something needs to get done, it needs to get done. And because that's private area at that point of time. I know a story of a buddy of mine with a police officer that entered a concert area. And he was not allowed to get in there because he didn't have the right accreditation. He didn't listen, so he ordered to, as a private security professional, he ordered him to go away, which he's legally allowed to. And the police officer didn't listen, so he got taken away by his colleagues. So that was a very bad day for him. But I don't know if it's true, but that's from Hurrying's saying. But that doesn't mean the powers that we have on private area. But to come back on the original mention that I wanted to say, is that as we are unarmed, people are more easily to approach us. Hey, this, that. We're more approachable. And we're able to be talking to people very much soon. Because if I approach somebody as a security professional on the streets, they come from the mentality like, okay, here's not somebody that is more powerful than a police officer usually. They are not police officer, but generally people, we work here a lot in the gray area, like for people not knowing what we are or what we are capable of or what we are allowed to do. So because basically I'm a citizen in a uniform. Good
That's very interesting, because that's a big difference in mindset between Europe and America too. Especially if you work here in the States in a uniformed service, in a uniformed security, private security service. A lot of the time, people just leave you alone. Sometimes you get somebody that approaches you, to ask a question or whatever, depending on the detail and the kind of job that you're working. But a lot of the time, if you're uniformed, people leave you alone unless something bad happens or they need your help with something. But at the same time, too, it's hard to do your duties, because there is that percentage of the population, a fairly large percentage of the population, that loves to argue and
Same
be
here.
be aggressive and everything. They're like, oh, you're just blah blah blah, you're no cop, blah blah blah. Now the state that I'm in, and with federal certification and regulation, because when we were at federal site venues that interacted with the public, Social Security services, for example, and things like that, you're dealing with the public on a day-to-day basis. And the verbal judo, the communication, is very important. But at the same time, we do have a full tool belt of equipment, including a firearm and OC spray and things like that. But people still want to argue and everything, just because they want to behave badly when they're told no by the federal staff for whatever reason, and then we tell them to leave, and they want to get about it, get aggressive and defensive like that. And it's just like, look, okay, you've got a couple of options here. You can leave on your own volition, as we've asked you to. I can make you leave, or we can detain you and let the federal law enforcement or the local police handle it. I mean, those are your options, for the most part. So usually they take the option to leave on their own, but just having to tell them that is
it's crazy.
Exactly. It is. And that's a difference in mentality too, and how people want to treat private security. Now, on higher end private security with federal contracting and private client executive protection and things like that, I mean, we can be as aggressive as we need to be.
Interesting.
To handle the situation and just keep people away, which I like a lot more. I have a lot more control over what I'm allowed to do and things like that. So compared to smaller security gigs I've done in the past, whether it's security coordinator, for a short time, I worked for a golf resort as one of their primary security officers. And I mean, that was
interesting.
That was not fun.
Why was it not fun? Because there are a lot of high profile clients there usually, but maybe that's the reason why it's not fun.
It wasn't even that. It was just a lot of the nuances of, you're dealing with intoxicated people all the time. You have to respond to hotel rooms for a myriad of different kinds of calls. And then even patrolling, and that was a pretty big resort too. It had 2 full golf courses on it and everything. Patrolling, we had to use our personal vehicles. So we were just racking up the mileage and the gas bills in our personal vehicles.
Your private vehicle?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. They didn't give us a golf cart or anything, as far as the company provision with that for that detail. So that did not last long. I was like, I'm done with this. This is not professional. I can't do this. Even though they gave us a professional, outfit and everything. I mean, in that, you weren't armed with that or anything. It was just a presence thing, and you were just doing a lot of risk mitigation and things like that, and stuff like that. So that was not fun. I much more enjoy the high end federal contracting and private client contracting and protective services in large. That's much more my forte, especially with my background. So I'm able to use my skills a little bit more and have a little bit more of independence and autonomy with things. So much prefer that. But yeah, that job was not fun.
But coming back to hotel security in general, that hotel security and hospital security, those specific to environments, man, you experience a lot of shite, to say it in that way. A lot of very concentrated people, and a lot of intoxicated people, a lot of drunk guards, and absolutely nutters. Drugs, prostitution.
Oh yeah.
Bothering people. And here you are, Dutch security. I don't have anything on me. Please go away. Please go away. Please
Yep.
go away. Otherwise, I'm detain you on private property. Okay, you're detained. Police. Okay.
Yep. Yep. And it's nice that you at least have those detention powers, the able to detain and hold them until law enforcement assistance can get there. That's
We have
at least
to ask
something.
them at least 3 times but
Yeah.
as that is in the Netherlands, it's a citizen's arrest, basically.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how they frame it here when you operate within the state here. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, is what it falls under is technically a citizen's arrest, but with the federal side, we have a little bit more play to it.
You have special powers, right? Like for me, that's insane. You can at least they can grant it some sorts.
Yeah. So at the general private and kind of state level security, it falls under the citizen's arrest kind of thing. At the federal level, like on the Federal Protective Service contract, so the Federal Protective Service under Homeland Security is technically a federal law enforcement agency, but it's divided between federal law enforcement officers and agents and inspectors and Homeland Security investigations, and then private contractors. So even though we're a private contractor, we're a representative federal official or an individual acting in the capacity of a federal law enforcement officer. So we have a little bit more play with that. Also because like federal sites and with federal laws and regulations, the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulation, it explicitly frameworks everything that is a violation, including disruptive behavior. So if somebody is continually disruptive on federal grounds or in a federal site, whether that's a monument area, whether that's in a public services office, immigration office, whatever it is, we can detain them. And then we hold them and wait for our federal law enforcement inspector to arrive, or they tell us to just have local law enforcement arrive, and then they're charged. They get taken and charged. So it kind of differentiates like that a little bit on the domestic side, or the CONUS within the continental United States world of acronyms. It varies. It varies like that on the domestic side quite a bit between higher end and federal contracting, and then completely state level or completely private client kind of deal. As a protection specialist for just private clients, like with the music industry and things like that, I never really detained anyone. It was much more using the verbal judo, using physical intervention tactics, and just that kind of thing, just taking the actions to properly protect the principal. So there's a big difference there too. So it just depends on what type of field within the industry that you're working in, and it can vary quite a bit. So
very interesting, especially the music industry, especially. I haven't done executive protection until this point, at least not in the common general sense of executive protection. I did some artist guidance while I was on multiple events. We were detailed or tasked to protect the principal when he or she was on the event security, on the event terrain environment. So just protecting them when they got off and on stage, and then detail them and protect them until they get over to the protection detail, which they were they personally hired, and working together in order to get them from the stage and back to their car or wherever they were going.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of did the same thing, but on the other end of that. So I would coordinate with the venue event staff and their security staff, and then so I was one of the protection detail that was hired either by the artist or their management agency or whatever it was. That's what I was doing. Sometimes I was just hanging out there with the event staff side stage while they performed and stuff, and then we would walk them out either to the VIP area or their trailer, or just get them in the vehicle and leave, whatever it was. So dynamically, it's super important for that for that continuity and communication to be there between all of the different players, the venue hired staff, outside hired event security staff, and then the protection specialist hired by the artist or their management or whatever. It's super important to be able to have that continuity and communicate with each other and work together to make sure everything just runs smoothly and that there's no major incidences. A lot of the artists that I was protecting were EDM artists, like
Oh yeah.
electronic dance DJs, like some big name DJs in that sector. So you had that added thing where sometimes I ended up having to help the venue staff with dealing with somebody who was tripping balls on some kind of drug, and it was just like, okay,
backstage,
wow.
like sometimes even the artists themselves just like drugs, and I can see them on the stage. You're like, oh my God, I have to handle this when they're done.
Exactly. It's like, oh my God, dude, why did you do that? But you have to handle it, and obviously being a private entity and in the private industry, you have discretion there. You're with your principal that you're protecting, you're not necessarily obligated to inform law enforcement if something like that has happened, but usually when it came to like patrons of the crowd or whatever, if something serious happened like that, you have to get them involved. It's like, I don't know what they're on, you need to get them medical attention right now.
Yeah.
So it's, I have advanced medical training, but I'm not an EMT. I'm not a paramedic, so we need to call them to get some help for this.
Get them in for like here in the Netherlands, we have a specific education for that. We have a dedicated certification for dealing with drugs, and because it's the Netherlands, of course we are.
Right.
To recognize what is it and how to deal with it and how we can take that up, and to at least provide first aid until the event security staff, medical staff arrives to take it over from us, and then scale it up if needed be. I was once working on defense on this event where this guy was just like tripping out like massively on GHB. It's like do you know what it is? Like
Rohypnol, yeah.
Like
I'm familiar.
there's those little bottles just like flipping out all over it, and I didn't have that certification. Currently trying to work on it to get it, but this event medical stuff was like, Robin, have you ever seen how to do a pain response to keep if somebody is alive?
Yeah.
But like the fist on his chest, like
knuckle on the chest. Yep. Wake them up. See if they wake up. Yep. I've had to do that. I've had to do that before too. And then we can get Narcan certification to administer Narcan, which works not just for opiate overdoses, but other things as well. It's actually worked on people just passed out drunk.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. He's actually worked on people like that before. But we get that training, and then I have TCCC, Technical Combat Casualty Care, and CLS Combat Lifesaver courses and stuff. So I can administer IVs to people and things like that, but I'm usually not carrying that kit or that kind of kit around, that advanced kind of kit.
Understandable.
Sometimes I'll have it in my vehicle and stuff. And then just depending on the detail and the contract that I'm working, sometimes we'll have a full med kit or a designated medic with us. It just kind of depends. But when it comes to the private protection stuff with private clients, like for music industry,
generally not.
Yeah, generally not have any of that. So then we just call paramedics if something serious happens. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Like
interesting to see that. Like I was wondering as well. Like the one of the things that why we got started up with that is because I remember a event that I did. It was very high profile artists. I'm not going to name the artist for discretion reasons, of course.
Yeah.
But like we were tasked to do like stage protection, like the front barrier protection, and we needed to discuss something with the security guys from that were guarding principal. But even we were not allowed to talk with the principal guards.
Huh.
To me, that was insane because those communication lines were
Yeah.
essential. Even
Yeah.
though, yeah, like why am I not able to talk with them? I need to get the information across that something dangerous is about to happen in front, and these guys aren't aware of it. I can go all the way up to command if we talk incident command system, go all
Yeah.
the way up to the chain of command and keep it clean. But I can do horizontally, which is far more efficiently in that matter.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, really. Because I mean, a lot of the time, the executive protection staff for the artist or whatever, hired by them or whatever it is, a lot of the time they're coming in and they're the ones that are supposed to take charge of everything. They're supposed to be helping dictate and direct and coordinate everything. So the fact that they weren't, that's a little,
It
yeah,
was
that's a
weird to see.
yeah, that's it's rather disappointing actually, to hear that. Because and I mean, some of the time when I was in there doing that, I was a one man show, and so I would go in and I would coordinate and have the venue staff doing certain things, and then have the event security staff doing certain things. And I'm like, you come to me, you let me know if anything happens or you need anything, But I was the guy handling it. They're supposed to be the ones with the highest level of training and the highest level of certification and everything, because they're the ones primary in protecting the artist and the interests of the management and everything. So they have to be one of the entities completely involved with that. That's very strange.
It was strange, but keep in mind that here in the Netherlands, that most of the event staff are not professionals. They are
Hmm.
part-time, just tutoring on the side because it's fun.
Sure.
Like if I'm working at one of these events, I am one of the few fully licensed guys on staff, usually
Okay.
with
Okay.
extras
Sure.
profiling, which I'm currently also working on. I read a book about it, but like medical stuff because of my search and rescue background,
Hmm.
like stop the bleed, that's the stuff. And
Yep.
even like when I carry a tourniquet on one of these events, staff will come up to it. What's that? You can't have that here. I mean, and then I have to explain to them what it is and what it does.
Yeah.
Like, but you wouldn't need that in this kind of environment. Oh yeah. Do you remember
France?
France? Indeed, I would like Rihanna Andre Grande or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. The
Yeah,
Eagles of Death Metal show. Yep. Yep.
shite. I
Yeah. That
mean,
was bad. That was bad. Um, and yeah. And again, there weren't really, the band, I don't think had a protection specialist with them, specifically. And then, yeah, it's like that here in the US too. A lot of the event staff, they're just bodies. They're
yeah.
just there. They're just there to facilitate access and screen people coming through to attend the show and things like that, and be in front of the stage and side stage just to keep people away.
Hmm.
They're just there as a body. Um, some of them do have advanced training, like you've said, and it's the same here too. But outside of that, yeah, it comes down to whether police are there or certified and licensed protection professionals like you and I are there for the interest of the artist or whatever it is, or for the venue for insurance purposes or whatever it is. So yeah, that's a big thing that a lot of people don't understand too.
Hmm.
But you're absolutely on point with that. Yeah, I always, it doesn't matter what detail I'm on, I'm always carrying at least 1 to 2 tourniquets. A saying here we have for tourniquets and medical equipment is one is none, two is one kind of thing. I mean, you can usually get
Redundancy.
away. Yeah, exactly. You can get away with carrying one, and I usually at least always carry one, and I have one in my 1 to 5 in my vehicle all the time. I've always got equipment, vital equipment like that on me. I had to get clearance and approved to carry a tourniquet on my duty belt for this last federal contract,
Wow.
domestically. Homeland Security, they're very, very, very picky and very restrictive on what you're allowed to utilize this equipment. And it bled over, and that goes back to that control thing a little bit. with the company, because the company issues equipment, but then we have to get approval to add certain items of equipment to it, like a tourniquet and things. I had to get approved for a tourniquet, and then certain things like we just aren't allowed to exchange for a better quality piece of kit, like our holster for our pistol. The holsters that we got were $5 holsters. They were garbage, absolute garbage, but they made us use them. They would not let me use my $200 holster that I have that is far better. They would not let me use it because of the restrictions that the government was putting on them and the whole uniformity thing, even though it didn't look any different really. It was like, this doesn't make sense, but I did not like using some of those iotas of equipment because it was just bad quality and it could have gotten me killed. So it's like, okay.
Same thing, like here as well. Like for me, yes, I get that companies here are providing some kind of equipment, but generally, most of the kit that I own, also the reason because I'm independent, working mostly of the time or working with my own security company, I buy my own gear most of the time, like the PPEs, like the protection, like the vest that I own.
Sure.
I got from Safe Life Defense because that's one of the best companies out there. It literally cost me almost an arm and a leg. It was like €1,000 total to get it imported.
Yeah,
but it's better than the stuff that we have here.
Oh yeah. They're one of the premier soft armor companies out there. Absolutely. Let's say the undervest that we were wearing in our uniform just on this last contract, it was Point Blank Industries, but it was made in Israel. So it had a stab proof rating to it, which was really nice. And then I actually wore speed plate inserts. So a slightly smaller ballistic plate insert over the Kevlar inside the vest, just for added protection. But yeah, no, that was pretty good quality vest. I was impressed with that too. So some of the equipment's good, but some of it is not.
It's junk. It's junk. But it's interesting to make the bridge about like the risks that we have here in the Netherlands, and to come back to the armed perspective as well. Like the major risk here in the Netherlands are not guns. The major risk is like somebody coming over and poking me with one of these.
Yep. Knife attacks. Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
Like, but and like blunt weapons and that stuff, or improvised weapons too.
Sure.
That's the major risk. Well, you guys will have a better reason to be more armed because you're dealing with firearms all the time.
Yeah. We are. We carry fire. Well, it depends on the job that you're on and everything, but we carry firearms all the time. And
but also from a threat perspective, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, the public, I love our American gun laws. I and that's a very, very American mindset with it. I love our Second Amendment, and I love that every law-abiding American and responsible citizen has that right to be able to carry a firearm and protect themselves. Because, like we were talking about, law enforcement is a responsive force. So, as Will says, you are your first and last line of defense. Gutter Fighting Secrets. I'm also an instructor with Gutter Fighting Secrets for hand-to-hand combatives and self-defense, as well as edged weapons. And I'm starting to do some of the firearm training as well. But kind of an aside there. I digress. Getting back to it, yeah. So we deal with firearms all the time. A lot of the time, people are smart, and we've talked about this in chats before. Posted signage everywhere saying you can't bring a firearm into this place and this place. There's only a few places in the United States where you cannot bring a firearm into the facility: federal facilities, schools, banks, and airports, and jails. That's pretty much it. You can pretty much take a firearm anywhere else. Even if a private company like a restaurant has a no firearms sign on their door, and
no problem.
Honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Wow. That's more with a private business saying that. That's an invitation to be robbed here, just in that mentality.
Wow, that's interesting.
Hey, guess what? nobody's got a weapon inside. So somebody that does have a weapon outside is can just go in and rob the place. So that's why security is important. But a lot of businesses obviously don't utilize that. I mean, the ones that do are the ones handling a lot of money, have a lot of expensive product, are just a high value kind of thing in large part, or they have some kind of vested interest by the state or the city, municipality, whatever it is, or the government, federal government. So, it varies like that. So yeah, no, we deal with people with firearms on the regular. A lot of the time, it's somebody who just forgets that it's a facility that they can't bring a firearm into, and we just tell them to take it out.
Mm-hmm.
There are those people, though, some with gang affiliation and stuff, they don't care. They're carrying without a carry license. And that depends on the state here. The state I'm in, I have a concealed carry license and all that, apart from my security firearm licenses, so I can carry just about anywhere I want. But there are people that come that have no concealed carry permit, nothing, and they're concealing and carrying a firearm, which is in this state is against the law. But it's also, they just don't care, and they're going to carry it in there wherever they want, and it's a problem because those people are more affiliated with criminal organizations a lot of the time. They're not respectful, citizens. So then we have to deal with them differently. So it just depends. And then with executive protection too, protecting a client stateside, a music person or whatever. Yeah, they get stalkers from time to time. Part of our job,
interesting topic.
It is. And part of our job as a protection specialist for them, we're doing the protection details and the physical security aspects and everything. But then we also have to take a book out of private investigation, and we have to start looking at social media and start doing all these things to look at certain people who may pose a threat. And that's part of that threat assessment. And some of the what we would call advanced work to figure out, hey, is this person actually like a risk as a stalker, or are they just like a super fan? There's a very fine line there. And obviously that many instances of that have happened in the past, John Lennon or whoever, where that line was crossed and a tragic incident happened, and that's where a protection specialist would have been very, very vital to come into play, and worth every penny, because they're looking at these people, whether the artist has encountered them before or not, with how social media is now and everything, and what people put out there. We were talking about this earlier. It's very easy to be able to figure out if somebody is intending on going to a certain place, and if they pose a threat, what they're saying, if they put out a manifesto, like all that stuff, you can find it very easily nowadays. So it makes our job a little bit easier, but it's all the more work that we have to do at the same time. So
I know that there are dedicated systems for that. Now, I had worked with a company, at least looked at their options. I know that one of the bigger world companies, I'm not going to name them, but like use a system for quick threat assessment to see if their protests are active, if there are like ambulances coming near, or police's fire, or protests, or all that kinds of stuff. It's pretty advanced stuff. I'll let you know if I can find it somewhere.
That's really interesting. That's really cool, actually, having kind of a unified monitoring system and alert system like that. That's actually really nice.
It was really cool. I actually contributed, like I was talking with them and was saying, okay, in the future I will definitely be interested, but this stuff is expensive, right? Is there an artificial intelligence on that, and you get notified, but it works on OSINT. So I'll try to hook you up on, let you know on what it is.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And that's like when I was talking about South Africa a little bit ago with the NOJAC system and their sniper system and everything. It's advanced tracking systems and things like that for vehicles, but it also ties into surveillance, and also some of the aspects of with media and information otherwise too. Fairly comprehensive and cool system, and it's a bunch of former South African like special forces guys and security professionals that got together and created these systems. So a lot of that just stems out of necessity. But the system you're talking about, that sounds really cool.
I'll
Um,
look you up on that. I'll let you know.
yeah, right on,
Um,
right on. Yeah, that's
uh,
awesome.
to have a question, like we covered some, we got a little bit off track here, but I thought there was interesting discussions on it, so let's just let it go.
Yeah.
But what do you think that one of the major differences is between European and security mindsets, too far as your experiences go,
Yeah.
and so this from US?
Yeah, and yeah, we kind of went over that a little bit earlier, but it's definitely a big part of that mindset is just how they conduct business, but also how they're interacting with both the client and the public or the locals or whatever it is. That's a big part of it, apart from the blatant nuances and differences in regulation and restriction on what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. But when it comes to mindset and mentality, it's very interesting in that regard. And there is a big difference. Here in America, we're much more, I wouldn't necessarily say aggressive, but assertive. We're much more assertive and much more off the cuff about things and very direct and commanding about things. Whereas I see with the European mentality, it's much more polite for the most part, which is it's nice to see from time to time. But also just in the ways that they conduct themselves in that regard, and how the mentality is when you approach a person and understanding the situation in its totality, and everything detailed kind of therein. Those are the big differences, because it's not assumptive on the American side, but a lot of the time it's, hey, we don't care, we need this, you need to leave and go do this or whatever. And then if something serious happens, that's when we jump in and handle the situation and stuff, or sometimes answer a question or whatever. But a lot of the time it's, we're not there with the intent of really engaging with the public or the locals or whatever all that much. We're just there as an overt presence and deterrence, and try to keep it that way in large part, instead of regularly and more cordially kind of engaging with people. The European side of it seems much more, there's much more of a degree of conditioning to understand that even though it's a private entity, it's still treated like public services in large part. And that's kind of how it is here in some regards, depending on the job and the contract that you're on, whether it's for the state or whatever. But a lot of the time it's different than that here. So it's just kind of like, people are here just to protect this stuff. Don't really engage with them, and all that stuff. So that's a big thing, apart from just how the process is for understanding a situation and a person that you're dealing with and things like that. So we definitely take it much more strong-handed here. So compared to
Interesting to
Europe.
see. It's one of the,
Yeah.
like the earlier topics that we of course are hooked on.
Yep.
I've one rounding topic that I want to discuss, and that's one that's at least close to my heart and trying to develop within Secure Mindset, is the mental health part of the private security industry.
Mm.
Because generally here in the Netherlands, mental health security industry, never heard about it. Even though we are pretty developed here in the Netherlands regarding mental health and pretty
Yep.
front up on it. How's your
Yep.
experience in that?
Yeah, you guys got a pretty good healthcare system too,
Mhm.
which I'm impressed by. Insofar as here, over the last couple of years, especially on the higher end contracting companies and corporations that do hold the federal contracts and overseas contracting and stuff, they have started to develop support services and things like that, should you need them, but they're still pretty rare. For most other security stuff, it's non-existent. And I mean, working some of these jobs, I mean, you're working some terrible, very long hours in some terrible conditions. And just doing that day in and day out for years on end can just wear anybody down, you know. And it happens with law enforcement too. But yeah, with security, there really isn't that much of a mental health care protocol or doctrine in place aside from a few major companies that deal with combat theaters and high risk contracting. It's non-existent, really. You know, if you end up having a problem or you want to get some care or whatever, it's really on you and it's on your dime. So
How do you think that we can improve that within the industry? Because I'm trying to battle with that in my mind for quite a while
yeah,
now. It's one of the reasons why I do a secure mindset.
yeah.
But
And that's really good because I really like what you're doing with secure mindset overall. I really like what you're doing with that.
thank
And
you.
I think it's beneficial not just on the European, not just in the European industry, but in the American industry as well. And I think connecting and kind of broadening the program, as it were, to organizations like ASIS, the American Society for Industrial Security, which is a huge, huge,
Mm,
long-standing organization, and several others, and hosting lectures and symposiums, and maybe working with them to develop a program that can be distributed to other security companies and can be just another tool for municipalities and the state and everything to utilize as well for the people that they contract and things like that. I think that would be very useful
that's an
to
interesting one.
start networking and developing a program for that kind of thing, even if it is just symposiums and lectures and maybe a brochure with some source link information on where somebody can go to get assistance if they need it. You know, something as simple as that to advancing it. I think something like that would be very, very beneficial for the industry as a whole.
That's
Um,
interesting.
yeah, because I mean, even with overseas contracting, again, some companies kind of have something developed in place now, but I mean, a lot
Not
of
a
the time
lot.
it's
It's rare.
you're on your own, and a lot of guys turn to the bottle. So that's I know. It's how it is. It's how it is, you know, and
Ugh,
it's unfortunate. Even the
it shouldn't have to
military.
be.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. It's private companies, you know, as efficient as they claim and tout to be, are very lacking in some regards, and that's one of them is actually standing up for their employees and taking care of their employees. Really, I mean, yeah, okay, you're giving them a fat paycheck, okay, but what else are you doing for them? You know, what else are you doing for them? A lot of the time, it's very little. It is, you know, because they're just trying to make as much money as they can, and they're footing the bill for a lot of stuff. But that's what a private company is for: is profit, is making profit by providing a service or a good, which I'm all for capitalism and everything. But at the same time, with this kind of industry, and you have literal human lives that are working for you and are part of your commodity and service that you're providing, there needs to be some more steps taken to take care of your staff and provide service otherwise. You know, a 401k is nice, a nice paycheck is nice. I'm able to buy the things that I want, but at the same time, what else? What else is there? You know, if somebody does overseas, if somebody does have a break, a mental breakdown or whatever, you know, a lot of the time the company just sends them home,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
And that, yeah,
And they go nuts and they get PTSD and
yeah,
mess up all things. Well,
yeah.
to hook up on the suggestion that you did, if anybody is interested in starting up with that, I don't know if you're okay with me saying that, but let me know. Drop me an email or write it down in the comments. If anybody has contacts within ACES or maybe the International Federation for Protection Officers, so IFPO,
There you go.
get
There you go.
involved. Send me an email. Let's start something up to get this thing rolling. I'm certain that we can get some collective efforts going on, and maybe we can work. Like if you're open for it, we can start it up together if you like.
Yeah, I'd be all down for something like that because I mean, burnout. What we
Burnout
call burnout,
sucks. I
yeah,
have
it
had that.
happens. It happens, and that's part of mental health too. Is just you're so overworked and beaten down and tired all the time and everything. It does affect you mentally. Burnout happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So developing networks and resources, and then some kind of program or system, it would be insanely useful for private protection, private industry professionals around the globe. Absolutely.
So,
I'd
all
be all
right.
for it.
I think on that note, again, let us know. Drop it down in the comments. Make sure if you do that, and we are starting up on that, make sure you subscribe, because I think we've got something here to get it starting up and start moving. Make sure that we get talked to, and also if you feel like you need help regarding this, if you're having scary thoughts for yourself, please go find to your nearest mental health professional in order to get your help sorted out. It helped for me with my burnout problems that got sorted out, but also for other crazy thoughts that you might be having for yourself, that you think you're crazy but you're not. Go to a mental health professional, please. It helps.
Yeah, there's a couple of apps and organizations out there like BetterHelp,
Yeah.
that are actually doing some really good work by offering assistance and services like that. And then here in the States, we have a national mental health crisis line, that anyone can call. All you have to do is Google National Crisis Line and call it. That's free. For veterans like myself, we have the Department of Veterans Affairs, which has gotten exponentially better over the last decade or so.
Awesome to
Um,
hear.
yeah, with their co programs and stuff. And if you're a veteran in the security industry, reach out for those services as well. They can help, and at the least you have you have that resource to be able to access
Mm,
it. And then also, with everyone, stay in touch with your friends,
yeah.
um, whether it's people that also work in the industry or not. Just social mental health is a huge thing, especially right now with all this crap going on. That's a huge thing. So stay in touch with your friends, reach out, try and meet up and hang out, and just have that bit of normalcy outside of work as viable. Because I mean, a lot of the time I was working on weekends and stuff, so I couldn't see my friends. So that
Same
was a big
here.
burnout thing. That was a big burnout factor. Yeah. But you know, reach out and make sure you're checking on each other and everything. That's a big thing too. Apart from the resources and services, is just make sure you're talking to your friends and family. There's no need to further isolate or alienate yourself just because the workload is just that intense.
Take care of yourself in
Yeah,
all forms and shapes, especially
yeah,
mental health.
absolutely. It's super important. So
All right, brother. Thank you very much for coming on. Again, this is DJ from Good at Fighting Secrets. Go check out his stuff and his own channel, which will be linked somewhere here, and definitely I'll put in a comment from DJ down in the description
yeah.
to have it, so you can easily click over to his content. Again, thank you very much for coming on. And again, make sure to make a comment also if you want to get involved with this project that we probably very likely will be starting together. And this is Robin coming at you for Secure Mindset, Protection, Rescue, and Lifestyle. And don't forget to think before you protect, and take the floor on this one, because I know you have one as well.
Well, thanks for having me first off, man. It was a good time. Yeah, my channel, DJ the Metalhead Mercenary, talk about subsecurity stuff and paramilitary stuff and all that, but I'm a musician too, so I have a lot of music stuff on there too.
Yeah.
My side hobby, I love music, I love metal. It's good for the mind. But yeah, so and what I say with Go to Fighting Secrets is stay adaptive and stay lethal, folks. Train, and stay on your A game.
Secure Mindset out. Thank you very much for watching.